Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another of Spark's investor webinars, which I'm very happy to welcome you to today. Today we have got another two very exciting companies on the platform, and they are going to be giving a presentation today. First of all, we'll have NestiFi Technologies, and then we'll have OncoAssure to present after that. Both brilliant investment opportunities, we believe, and both are EAAS qualifying companies as well. NestiFi is a EAAS at 50%, and OncoAssure is EAAS at 35%. Highly qualified personnel in each of the businesses, and you'll find out in good detail what each of those are as the presentations go on. A bit of housekeeping. We will be finished by 2 o'clock, so that's my promise to you today. There is a question and answer session that we'll have as well. Now, the Q&A, Zoom, for their whatever the reason they've done this, have hidden the Q&A button behind the More button. So if you see at the bottom of the screen, you'll see three dots. If you go into More, you can open up the Q&A box, which will enable you to write a question. And please, I'd encourage you to do it as the presentations are going on, and we can ask those questions to the promoters at the end of the presentation. So, without further ado, I think what we'll do is introduce you to the first of our companies today, and that is NestiFi. And we're joined by Niall Dennehy and Dominic Sherlock, who are the promoters of NestiFi, of course. So NestiFi itself is a B2B family wealth platform, and it's assisting companies, financial institutions, retain clients as wealth is passed from generation to generation. It's sold as a white label product to financial companies as a B2B product, and has just announced its first major contract with a credit union group from the US. And Niall will go into a bit more detail about that as he goes on. So Niall, you're very welcome, and Dominic, you are of course as well. NestiFi itself, it's got a pre-money valuation of 10 million euros. It's got a US VC investing in this round as well, for a sum of 430,000 euros. Enterprise Ireland are also investing in this round, 300,000 from them. And as I said, it's a 50% EAAS, meaning that if you invest 1,000 euros, you're getting 500 back in your as tax relief if you are a qualifying taxpayer here in Ireland. So guys, you're very welcome. If you'd like to share your screen, and then I'll let you crack on with your presentation and quick demo of the product.
Great, happy to. And Chris, thank you for the opportunity. Great to be here. We appreciate everybody attending the webinar, and excited to tell everybody about NestiFi. Before I share my slides, one thing that I wanted to talk about was, again, family. And family is at the center of everything that we do. And ultimately, I wanted to talk about one person as my mother, how she was the inspiration behind this, plus my 4 children. And I hope that some of them are listening today, but it really is all about the family. And a big part of that reason is back in 1987, I grew up in a small village in Cork called Ballydesmond, and right next door to our house was the local credit union. And that credit union was set up by, and as was the movement in Ireland, a lady called Nora Hurley, who was the founder of the credit union movement in Ireland. And what happened back in 1987, when I was 7, my mother would have taken me by the hand, walked me to the local credit union, opened up an account on my behalf. But what we're seeing nowadays is, before children ever take that journey, sometimes they're being intercepted by Revolut, by Robinhood, by Crypto.com. And the idea is to, as you mentioned, to make this available to institutions like credit unions so that they can not just retain, but they can attain the next generation. And also, I'm a father of 4. I've got 4 kids ranging from 1, 7, 10, and 13, who all live in Goatstown in Dublin. And one of the things that I observed over the past couple of years in particular was an increasing amount of Amazon boxes showing up on our doorstep, which were being gifted to the kids, cash being stuffed into an envelope for christening, communion, confirmation, etc. And I figured there's got to be a simpler way to do this, to enable families to come together in a collaborative manner to invest and save on behalf of children. But really, it's all about building AI that will get to know you from birth through inheritance. So with that in mind, I will now go over to the slides and showcase what we've been building. And very excited to do so. And again, thank you for the opportunity, and to everybody who has tuned in. So Bear with me one moment, and I'm going to bring up my screen here. Okay, so basically, NestiFi is all about AI that will help keep families investing for multiple generations. And it's a platform for the financial institutions out there to retain clients across the great wealth transfer. And we're going to talk about some figures very shortly, and they are truly staggering. But the organizations that we're targeting and that we're doing really well with at the moment are credit unions and community banks, primarily in the United States of America, but not just America, also here in Europe, where there's a huge opportunity as well. Because a lot of them right now at the moment, they're losing customers, they're losing them fast. If you think back to my journey with the credit union in Cork and Ballydesmond, back in 1987, that same credit union today has got a huge amount of trust with the local community, as do all of the credit unions around the world. And next week, I'm going to be in Illinois, in Iowa, and Wisconsin, meeting with credit unions, including our first paying client. And the thing that we found in common across both sides of the Atlantic is that they're all struggling to retain and attain new customers. And we're building a solution for them. And the number is staggering. In the US, over the next 25 years, it's expected that 124 trillion, that's trillion with a T, is going to be passed from parents to their children, to their grandchildren. And that's a huge amount of wealth. And what we're seeing now is that there's really, across Europe and America, a K-shaped society is starting to be developed, whereby there's a huge pass down of wealth, but it's not being distributed evenly. And a lot of people here in Ireland, in Europe and the States are, to be blunt about it, are financially illiterate. And financial literacy is something that we want to help families build together and to come together to be more financially literate. And some of the people out there who talked about this include Fortune, and Fortune magazine called it the great transfer of wealth. It's going to be bigger than ever, and millennials will get the greatest cut of this. And what we're also seeing, though, is that this great transfer of wealth is also becoming what the institutions that we're dealing with refer to as a great risk transfer. And it's becoming a great risk transfer for a number of reasons. And what we found is that 81% of people end up firing their parents' financial advisor post-inheritance, which is a staggering figure. Sometimes that's because the people who inherit the cash are dealing with older people who may be not in tune with their needs, but there's a big shortage of advisors projected over the next 20 years in the US, and they reckon that there's going to be 100,000 advisor shortage. And one of the things that we're able to do with AI to help address this is to help extend and augment the capabilities of advisors. And the other thing we found is that the 2/3 of millennials, and you can extend that now to Gen Z, they expect advanced digital offerings. And 50% of the people surveyed, they lament the lack of tools that are available on preferred digital channels from existing financial institutions. And the example that people constantly point to here in Europe and in Ireland is Revolut. Look at the market share that they have. Look at what they're doing. Look at the products that they're bringing to the market. And we want to enable people like your credit union, like OncoAssure, like the pillar banks here, to compete with the modern neobanks and the modern technology providers to be able to offer these more compelling and engaging services. And one of the things that we talked about there was the USA and that 124 trillion amount. But in Europe, it's as big. And what we're seeing is that even if you take our little island here in Ireland, Miles O'Grady, the CEO of Bank of Ireland, recently came out in the Irish Times and said that in a study they published with Goodbody, that over 295 billion euro is now being held by what they term retired households, and that will be passed down from these retirees to the next generation. So even in Ireland, there's a huge amount of wealth. And if you look at Europe then as a whole, by the year 2030, it's expected that that figure is going to be 3.5 trillion. And to give you some more food for thought for people in the audience here, they estimate that there's between 170 and 192 billion euro sitting on deposit overnight with banks here in Ireland, earning relatively, in fact, some would say practically zero interest. And a lot of that stems from the fact that people are not completely literate about money and what it can do for them. And there's a big push, and the Irish government, as part of their EU presidency, will be behind this with the Savings and Investment Union, which is a movement that is aimed to harmonize savings and investment products across the European Union to mobilize pools of capital. But we see these as really being mega trends that we are positioning the product for. And in Ireland, to take that case, if and when we launch a personal investment account, also known as a savings and investment account, which we project will happen next year, if Simon Harris and team can legislate for that, there will be an explosion in demand and people will take this up, hopefully in the same way that people did with the SSIA product back in the noughties. The other interesting thing that we found as part of the research is that by the second generation, in terms of people who inherit wealth, the staggering fact is that 70% of families lose their wealth by the second generation and 90% lose their wealth by the third. And one of the ambitions that we have with AI is to be able to put what we would term an AI-powered family office at your fingertips or in your pocket with our technology. That is something that we're building towards with the technology. And to go back to Ireland, again, a few things to point to. It is a small market, but again, being a parent of 4 children and living here and being based here and being very passionate about the country and what we achieve in the near future, we really do want Irish households to be more involved in direct investments. And what we found is right now, according to the study, only 2.2% of Irish households hold financial assets that are direct investments, which is one of the lowest in Europe. And if you look at the EU average, that's over 7.5%. So again, part of the reason that we're very bullish on Ireland, and we want this to succeed here, and we'll show you a demo shortly as to how that can work. One of the things then that we're really building out and we're focusing on is AI. And what we're doing is building AI that will serve every part of the generation. So what we're doing is from 0 to 5, our technology is going to enable parents to open an account. Seb, who is our AI-powered agent, will start to learn your family values in the same way that a parent would teach their children about money. Seb will get to know the family. It will help support automated contributions. And at the age then of 6 to 12, the ambition for us is to enable families and children to start to learn to fly. And that is then with things like gamified education, practice investments. And by the ages of 13 to 17, we want people to be able to take part in real investment concepts, learn about family collaboration, and have conversations about money. And by the age of 25, we want children, families, and everybody involved to be able to open independent accounts. And ultimately, then the sale that we have is that they would stay with the institution and that the institution is building a deeper relationship with everybody that they serve. And the end goal then for us is that from birth to inheritance, we want to enable an institution to build a 25-year relationship that no other competitor can replicate. And we believe we've got the technology and the team to do that. And to elaborate a little bit more about Seb then, which is our AI, one of the things that we're building with Seb is that it will enable people and the technology to perceive, which means monitoring the family's financial data, look at life events, look at the market conditions in real time. And on top of that, then it can reason on your behalf. It can apply behavioral science. It can use financial modeling. And then over time, it'll be able to act and to execute on your behalf and act as what we would call an autonomous AI agent that would orchestrate financial decisions across the entire family. So very exciting. And if you think about it then, one of the things that we're building with Seb is we're enabling personalized financial guidance. We're also enabling adaptive learning so that depending on your age, depending on your demographic, we will learn and adapt content to meet the needs of you and your family. We're going to offer interactive support, which means that 24/7, an institution can serve anybody. And then we want to ensure that we've got future-ready youth so that parents and children can manage investments and that Seb would learn from every financial interaction and leverage AI to offer a more tailored financial experience. So that's a little bit about NestiFi. And Chris, what I'm going to do now, and thanks to everybody for listening, is hop on over to a demo that I'm going to fire up here on my phone. So I will need about 10 seconds to do that. But Chris, while I'm doing that, let me pause here and pass it back over to you. And I'm going to fire up a demo. So bear with us for one moment.
Yeah, no problem at all. That's great. Thanks very much, Niall. We've got a number of questions in already. So just for a reminder, the Q&A button is behind the More on the bottom of your screen. So click on the 3 buttons on More and you'll find the Q&A box and you can type in your question there. So Niall, back to you with the demo.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Chris. So we put together a demo, and at the start of the presentation, I spoke about my four children. So to give a little bit of personal information away, my four children are Clara, Cassandra, Charlotte, and Colin. Clara is a 1-year-old baby. Cassandra is a 7-year-old girl. Charlotte is my moody teenager, and Colin is my 7-year-old boy. And what we're going to do is show you a journey that enables a family to come together in a collaborative manner. And in this case, it's my wife, Jane. And I want to show you how then she can make a contribution from WhatsApp message. We did demo recently to OnPost. We showed them this as a demo, but to be clear, we haven't signed them up yet as a paying client. I want to put that out there. But we're very hopeful that organizations like OnPost will be very interested in what we're doing. So to walk you through the demo, what I can see is I've got a nest egg for each child set up there. I can dive into a nest egg for Clara. I can see what's been set up on her behalf. I can look at Charlotte there. But the journey that we're going to go through here is to go into Clara's profile and set a target for her, which is a life event. And in this case, this is something that everybody in Ireland can relate to. We want to enable Clara and the extended family to put together a nest for a house deposit. So I'm going to set a goal of €25,000. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite a family member to be able to make a contribution to that house deposit then on behalf of Clara. So I can share a link, I can go to WhatsApp, I can pass it over to my wife, Jane. When I then navigate to my WhatsApp chat, what I can see is a message is going to be there. And Jane is then able to tap on this message to help Clara reach her future goal. What pops up as a web link that's accessible through email, through iMessage, through WhatsApp. I can select the amount that I want to donate or to gift. In this case, it's €250. The person making that contribution can specify the amount. They can add a message that can be associated with that. So think back to what I mentioned about cash being stuffed into an envelope. The idea here is that with Apple Pay or with bank account or with the debit card, the parent, in this case, my wife, Jane, can make a contribution towards a deposit for a future home for Clara, and that becomes part of Clara's nest egg. So that's a whistle-stop tour. We've got the invest option. We've got a savings investment here. We've got financial literacy built in, and we can also plan for and talk about what is going to be enabled in the future for the kids. And at the back end, we haven't got full time to go through it today, but there's a dashboard that will be available to advisors for the institution where they can see all of that information. They can see who has made a contribution, who hasn't, and they can better serve than the people that they're dealing with. But think about that as being what we refer to as a white label solution that can be made available to any institution. And right now, our target demographic are credit unions, community banks in the US, as we would call tier 2 financial institutions, and also here people like OnPost, the credit unions in Ireland. And one of the things to note about Ireland and why it's a perfect place to start a company like this is around 70% of the population here in Ireland have an account with the credit union, like I do since 1987, back in Ballydesmond, which I still get statements for to this day. And this is really why we think we've got something hugely compelling, exciting, and we are hopefully going to take a big chunk and share of the market in the near future. So thanks to everybody for their attention. I hope you found the personal journey interesting. I've also got my amazing CEO, Dominic, with me here, who's going to help walk through the questions. He's far more efficient and organized than I am, especially around finances. So Dominic and I will chime in and answer some questions. So thanks again for the attention.
No, thanks very much indeed. And we're joined obviously by Fergal as well, who will help me on asking those questions. But I've got the first one here. So question in, why now? Why is this the moment for NestiFi?
Maybe I'll take number one. This will reinforce some of the information that I mentioned already, Chris. But again, if you look at this big transfer of wealth that's happening, on both sides of the Atlantic, it's actually a global megatrend. Think about the things that are happening this week. You've got the SpaceX IPO. You've got all of the AI companies going. We believe that families aren't being served and where they are right now. And there needs to be better tools to enable families to come together in a collaborative manner. And I go back to that simple example. I think about it myself as a parent. And I've got the willingness to gift to my nieces, my nephews, my friends, my family. And I find that our family needs to know more about money. So all of these trends and the volume of money coming together, we believe, form this mega trend that institutions need to take advantage of. So it's ultimately, if I were to sum it up, great transfer of wealth, families needing more modern tools, and the institutions haven't got a really good way of dealing with their base so that they can retain and attain, is how we would put it.
Great. Very good.
Excellent. Yeah. So I have some questions just around the business model. So what your monthly costs, obviously there's an example there given Revolut is free and then you pay for the premium 7.99 and 19.99. So from a consumer point of view, what's your business model? And then also from the bank side as well, if you could just break that down for us guys, it'd be great.
Well, yeah, we've got several revenue streams, both from the actual rollout of our platform at the institutions. We've got basis points based on assets under management, and we've got upselling opportunities. We can go in very modular offerings, very low cost to institutions, maybe with a learning module first, and then land and expand something that immediately adds real value for them, and we can scale depending on what size the organization already is, meet them where they are, and we different offerings for different sizes of businesses.
So initially, there's a payment that the bank makes to kind of to onboard, the credit union, or the example there you gave us on Post, and then there's a yearly then, or is monthly then based off that? Okay, very good. And just as a kind of follow on that, just merging another question regarding the upselling, does the app, or will it potentially support tax planning? Is there any kind of future there in terms of the tax angle?
Yep. Pass it over to Tom.
Yes, well, we've engaged financial planners to advise us on what our AI tools can help with there. And basically, this is a tool that helps advisors already in the institutions to maximize their conversations with their existing customers. So we offer the guardrails that they can set up themselves based on their own policies, etc. But in the States, things like UGMA and the various Invest America accounts, etc., the guardrails are already there. We just apply them. So very flexible depending on the market that we're in and the needs of the individual customer.
Very good. There's quite a long question here. It's about the superiority that you have over your competitors at the moment, and how is that going to be maintained as the years roll on? Because obviously they'll be able to develop something similar behind you. Is it going to be a land grab first of all? Is that how you're going to do it? So yeah, how do you expect to do that over many, many years?
Yeah, and I can tell you, Chris, what we've been doing. We've been meeting lots of clients, both sides of the Atlantic. Next week, for example, I'm going to be in, I think I mentioned Illinois, Wisconsin, and Iowa, meeting with clients. And what we found is that the technology expertise and capabilities that a lot of these institutions have that are smaller, they haven't got an in-house technical team. They're often going through what we would call a systems integration vendor or a bigger company, which sometimes is not really willing to meet their needs. But our sweet spot is going to be these, what we would term tier two, smaller institutions like a credit union. And we are building one scalable platform for everybody, but there will be some bespoke development done on their behalf as well, depending on the size of the institution. One of the big things that people talk about now at the moment in the media, which was made, I guess, famous by people like Palantir selling their technology, is the forward deployed engineering model. And we believe now in the age of AI, it's quite easy to really spin up and develop an application. And you can clone something that exists. If anybody's been looking at Claude Fable 5, a coding tool released this week, there are all sorts of examples of people out there cloning applications that already exist. But we believe that in terms of winning market share, creating something innovative, it's going to be more important than ever to really listen to the needs of the customer. But AI at scale really helps you to be more in tune with their needs and their requirements. And some element of bespoke customization by getting out there, meeting people, pressing the flesh, and knowing our customers better is reason that we believe in the future an organization like us is better served to win. Some of the more incumbent people who are selling into our segment, maybe Fiserv, who would be a publicly listed company. You've got FIS, Alchemy, etc. There are some European players. But what we've found with them in general is that they're not very agile, they're not very nimble. And in terms of going through a process to work with them, you have to prove that you are good enough to work with them. So we believe there's a massive opportunity for companies like ourselves to come in and really meet and exceed the needs of the customers that we're serving. That's being evidenced now by the launch, which we'll put out a press release about tomorrow, hopefully, with our clients in the US to talk about the $6.4 billion under management with our launch partner collectively that we're seeking to get launched with.
Very good. Fergal.
Brilliant. Just a question on fraud prevention and awareness. Is there any kind of safeguards built in to the platform, guys?
Yeah, and what we say, Fergal, is we are what we would term agnostic to know your customer and anti-money laundering solutions. And the clients that we're speaking with right now, and the first client that we've signed, they, for example, have the KYC AML solution to scan people's passports, their ID. I think it's okay to mention them, Alloy, who would be a pretty well-known organization for doing those checks. And our technology then works seamlessly with that. And what we do is we would take that instruction from the KYC AML provider, we parse that through our technology, and nobody can get onto our platform and nobody can make a payment or make an investment without having gone through that process. But that's something that we can provide as a sell an add-on. We can bill for that and charge per authentication. But in most cases, we anticipate that it'll already have been done by the partners. And if you think about the business model that we have, that friction in a lot of cases will be reduced. To give you an example, the credit union that we're launching with in the US, they already have their clients pre-authenticated. They've gone through the KYC AML process, and we're just taking that flag or that information from them and saying that every account that's opened up with your NestiFi application has already been vetted and validated.
Brilliant. Okay, you mentioned the transfer of wealth and inheritance tax as a major factor for the reason of the 70% that's lost from generation to generation. Does the app essentially provide a family way to circumvent that tax, or is it, or essentially if it's a joint or shared account?
So the way we're building this really is, and we've got to be pretty careful how we do it, because we can't give any financial advice ourselves just yet. We're not regulated. We plan to be at some stage in the future. But what we're doing is really surfacing insights and data and providing guidance to an advisor at an institution. And ultimately, then everything will go through these institutions. But to give you a very basic example, and when we went back to the inception of the company, we talked to about 50 people, seeing what they would need and what they wouldn't, starting here in Ireland. One of the things that was pointed out to us is that if you had an AI, which we have right now, that can get to know you, get to know your situation. And for example, if you live in Ireland and you've got children, one of the things that we can embed into either the onboarding process or can be given to you as part of the advice is that, okay, I now know you've got 3 children. Did you know, according to the small gift exemption, aka the SGE in Ireland, you can gift up to €3,000 per year tax-free to a child. And over time, that can compound. So over a 10-year period, you can give €30,000, if you take Ireland as an example, to your children. And later on in life, if you wanted to, give them a property or give them something else, that can be written off against tax. But what we found is a huge amount of people, and in fact, very few even know that exists. And the people that do, to take the Irish context, since I'm assuming a lot of the Irish audience will be here, probably are working with an institution, a wealth manager already, and they're paying for or receiving this advice, but a lot of people have no idea about this. So when I went back to talking about Seb, our AI, getting to know you, getting to know your family, it can piece together a picture about you, who you are, how many kids you have. I can offer you guidance, but that's only pushed to that family. Take that example of an easy parent through the institution right now. But yes, it can provide that information, but it has to go through the institution.
Okay, very good. Final question, and it's got to be a quick answer. What does success look like? Where do you expect to be going with the business that you've got?
So ideally, hundreds of institutions leveraging our technology, preferably thousands in that demographic, credit unions, community banks, etc. Over time, we want to serve wealth managers, RIAs, even pension planners, and generating hopefully hundreds of millions of euro in revenue and being known as the #1 platform in the world, being leveraged by, in the future, tier 1 and tier 2 institutions to help with the great transfer of wealth.
Very good. There's been a lot more questions that we've had time that we haven't had time to ask. So what we'll do, we'll get those sent over to NestiFi. They'll put a written response to them all, and we'll publish that on the campaign page in the next day or two. So please, if your question hasn't been asked, then you'll find an answer to your question there. But anyway, Niall, Dominic, thank you very much for your time, and we'll pass over now to Onco. So guys, thank you very much indeed. So I would like to introduce you to Des O'Leary, Des and Larry Dillon as well. Des is the CEO of OncoAssure. Larry is the CFO of OncoAssure, and OncoAssure is a medical diagnostic company based out of Nova UCD, and it has developed and validated a test for prostate cancer. Des previously had a company called OncoMark that was sold to a company called Cepheid in 2021, and that is the company OncoAssure is pretty much a rinse and repeat of that same technology, but of course for a different cancer group and a different elements to it, of course, as well that Larry and Des will go into in a short while. So it's a company that is live on the platform at the moment. And Des and Larry, please start your presentation, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, thanks very much, Chris. Let me just open up.
I failed to say that you are an EIS qualifying company, EIS of 35%. So yes, so please note that for everybody. But guys, yeah, if you've got your presentation there, I'll slide into the background and I'll see you in 10 or 12 minutes time.
Okay, it should be coming up now. Let me just... No, wrong one, sorry. Sorry, is that coming up now?
No, we've got your wrong screen there,
Okay,
Des.
sorry. Okay, let me try again. Here we go.
That's the one.
That's the one. Okay, let me put it in play mode. Okay. Is that visible now?
Yeah, it's visible. It's not in. There we go. That's it now. Right. See you in a few minutes.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Look, I'm very pleased to talk to you and present this opportunity to Spark investors. As Chris mentioned, I'm CEO and co-founder of OncoAssure. So what is OncoAssure? Well, we're a medical diagnostic company that has a unique approach that's backed up by novel intellectual property that solves diagnostic problems in cancer management. In the past, we've developed successful breast and prostate cancer tests, and we're now developing a new test for cutaneous melanoma. So what is the problem? The problem is there are huge unmet diagnostic needs in many cancers. The particular unmet need that we have focused on at OncoAssure is the very poor clinical risk estimation after diagnosis of cancer. And this poor risk estimation by traditional means can result in extensive over or under treatment. So we have identified specific unmet needs in many cancers, and projections in all these areas show rapid growth in demand for improved tests and treatments, notwithstanding the improvements in these areas. So a quick run through our background. As Chris mentioned, we were originally part of a company called OncoMark, which I joined in 2016, and where we developed a novel breast cancer test. And we clinically validated that, published it, and we're about to launch it. And we were approached by a very large US company, Cepheid, one of the largest molecular diagnostic companies in the world, who offered to acquire the test from us. So we sold the test to them. In fact, we sold the whole company to them so they could acquire the intellectual property. And that was a very good exit for our investors at that time. The same day we sold OncoMark, we set up OncoAssure. The team moved across, it's the exact same team, with a view to developing similar tests in other cancer areas. Our first test to develop as part of OncoAssure is a prostate test, which I'll go into in a bit more detail. We completed development of that test, and it's now about to be commercialized in the US. But in our next test in the pipeline is a test for melanoma, and we're well advanced in developing that. And importantly, we've identified areas in other cancers where the exact same unmet needs exist and where we feel we can develop similar very high-performing tests to meet those needs. So what is the opportunity with respect to prostate cancer? Well, prostate cancer is the fourth most prevalent cancer globally. The oncology diagnostic sector in general is the fastest growing area of diagnostics. This has been driven by aging populations, the rising cancer rates, and then the increasing adoption of precision medicine and molecular tests, which is what our test is. Globally, there's 1.5 million annual diagnoses of prostate cancer, and 1.2 million of those are eligible for our test. The US market specifically, and that's where the main developed market is at the moment, is worth over 1 billion for this test. And the SAM, the serviceable addressable market at the moment, is over 450 million. So what part of the clinical pathway does the test work? So I show here then the complete clinical pathway. Diagnosis of prostate cancer is usually made by a biopsy and an MRI. We come in after that. There's a question then, I mentioned risk stratification is the cancer that's been diagnosed low risk or high risk? And there's a very important distinction. High risk should go straight to treatment. But the majority of patients, up to 80%, are actually low risk. And they should not go to treatment. They should go through what's called active surveillance, where the condition is monitored. And so this is the problem we're solving. We're giving more accurate risk stratification so that patients don't unnecessarily go down the treatment route, because therefore they'd be overtreated. And overtreated in this area can result in up to 60% of patients being overtreated. Further down the clinical pathway, after radical treatment, a similar question arises, particularly after radical prostatectomy. Is the patient subsequently lower risk or high risk? But if they're lower risk, they just need to be monitored. Again, if they're high risk, though, they need to have treatment. So our test then, risk is validated to risk stratify at that point in the clinical pathway as well. So we're addressing a lot of unmet and serious needs here. So how does the test work? So tumor tissue from the biopsy is dissected from a slide and put into a vial where the RNA, the ribonucleic acid, is extracted. Using PCR, it is then measured, and the result is fed into a risk stratification algorithm. And then a final risk analysis is given. So basically, it's what we call an RNA expression test on the basis that difference in RNA expression will indicate either low risk or high risk cancer. So how does OncoAssure Prostate, it's what we call our main product, how does that perform against existing tests on the market? Well, I show here just one slide on this. The orange bar, the length of these bars indicate the strength of the test, the performance level of the test. You can see the orange bar, which is the OncoAssure test, with respect to the two clinical endpoints, adverse pathology and biochemical recurrence. This can clearly show, versus the blue bars, which are the competitor tests on the market, that our OncoAssure Prostate performs far better in this critical metric of test performance. It's a combination of sensitivity and specificity. So what are the other USPs then associated with our test? Well, as I mentioned, it's high performance, but it's also a next generation molecular test. Existing tests in the market were developed over 10 years ago. Our test is powered by our development process, which identifies master driver genes that cover multiple biological pathways shown there on the right. And very importantly, we have developed our test using contemporary clinical features. By contemporary, I mean these weren't realized 10 years ago, of aggressive cancer and poor clinical outcome. This includes a metric called cribriform pattern and Gleason grade 5. So these are not part of the competitor tests inputs, but we have included them in ours, giving us this distinct advantage from a clinical perspective. So what about the market? As I mentioned, it's exceptional. TAM over 1 billion and only 40% is penetrated. In April, we signed an agreement with a CLIA lab, GoPath Labs, based in Chicago. These are CAP accredited and CLIA certified, and the test is currently being transferred with a launch date of quarter 3 this year. Last year, we achieved CMS Medicare. It's a reimbursement code, very important for any in order to enter the US market. We've got that code approved, a specific one for our test, at $3,873 per test, which is a premium rate. So in terms of interacting with leading US cancer centers, we have studies ongoing or planned with 5 leading Tier 1 cancer centers. Mount Sinai Hospital, the study with them has commenced. Northwestern University, Chicago, we're about to finalize agreement with them. We've recently signed an agreement with the National Cancer Institute, part of the National Institute of Health in the US, for a study. And we're also in discussions with MD Anderson Center in Texas, and with Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, part of Harvard in the US. We have a study agreed, and we're finalizing an agreement. So we're getting a lot of traction with the Tier 1 centers in the US, even at this point. So what about our key revenue milestones and the various catalysts? Well, with respect to clinical validation, that is complete. We've established scientific credibility. From a patent point of view, we filed an EPO patent. We have a priority date of March 22. We're at PCT stage, so our IP protection has been secured. The test has been LDT, that's Laboratory Developed Test certified. So we've addressed the regulatory compliance aspect. We've achieved Medicare reimbursement at a premium rate, and the test is being transferred to the US. So in terms of revenue projections, we're projecting 2.5 million in revenue by 2028, 5.8 million euro in revenue by 2029. In the context of a future exit, our total product revenues would support a 5x return on investment by 2028, based on industry valuations. As an example would be Oncotype GPS, a prostate test for exactly the same clinical indication, sold to a company called MDX Health in 2022 for $100 million. So just one slide really on melanoma to mention that the melanoma condition, cutaneous melanoma, is unfortunately increasing worldwide, expected to double or to increase by more than 50% from up to 2040. So we're well advanced in developing a melanoma test using the same approach that we use for both breast and prostate. We've completed the discovery phase, and we will commence validation by quarter 3 this year, and we expect to complete the development and validation of that test by quarter 1 next year. In terms of the senior management team, I'm CEO and co-founder. I've been in the diagnostic industry for the last over 30 years. I've led a lot of diagnostic developments and commercializations, over 20 products brought to the market. I've also established molecular sales and marketing divisions. I've had 3 exits in the past, and my co-founder and chief scientific officer is Professor Liam Gallagher. He's professor of cancer biology at the University College Dublin. He has a global profile as a cancer researcher, and he's coordinated several large cancer projects worldwide. So what are the funding and the plans? Well, to date, we've raised 6.4 million in funding. There's 350,000 of equity available to Spark, but we'll in fact take more. The pre-money is 9.15 million. As Chris mentioned, the investment is EIS eligible at 35%. We have 1.138 million already committed as part of this round, and that is from our current investor base, which includes the IRIS Syndicate, the MedTech Syndicate, Enterprise Ireland, and private investors. So what we want the current funding for is to complete the launch of the OncoAssure prostate in the US, to give us access to more clinical cohorts for prostate studies and for melanoma studies, to complete the development of OncoAssure melanoma, and bring us to profitability and exit. So just to summarize then, the strengths of the investment proposal: we've identified large unmet clinical needs and market opportunities in many human cancers. We have a novel proprietary approach that generates new intellectual property with every development. The genomic classifiers that we've developed have a very high price point, And we have an established track record with the breast cancer test and exit to a large player. The prostate product that I mentioned is already developed, validated, and will be on the market this year. We have a low-cost route to market via the CLIA lab pathway, and we're now with an established industry player. We have an expert team capable of delivering a portfolio of novel high-value oncology tests, we believe. And we are targeting an exit to a large global player, as with the breast test, or with our new partner in the US from GoPath, who incidentally has requested a right of first refusal if we want to sell the test or the company. We see this happening from 2027 on, which at that point we will have a 2-test portfolio, not just a 1-test portfolio, which we had when we exited with the breast test. So that's all I've got to cover, really. Very happy to take any questions.
Des, thank you very much indeed. That was excellent. Perhaps you can unshare your screen and we can see you in full-size Technicolor glory. And
we'll get than sharing it.
We'll get into the questions. So thank you very much for that. Is FDA approval required for the test in the US? Is one of the first questions.
So there's 2 ways of putting a test on the market in the US, by FDA or by what's called a CLIA lab. So, and there's thousands and thousands of tests use the CLIA lab route. So the short answer is no, FDA approval is not required. For complex tests like this, the typical route taken is the test goes to one lab, in this case GoPath Labs, and they provide the test for the whole market in the US.
Very good. Thank you.
Brilliant. Maybe a question for yourself, Larry, financial question on revenue. So to achieve your current revenue projections, what percentage of the existing market will need to be captured?
Okay, we're looking at a very low percentage. We're looking at overall, we're approaching for customers that haven't already been using the test, and we're looking at below 5%, and that's the 5 years out. So initially, our revenues are going to come from a very, very low percentage. You're talking about 1% and less to achieve the revenues that we've projected.
Very good.
Perfect. Thank you.
Question going back to your previous company, OncoMark, Des. What was the previous company sold for and how many times? I'm not sure whether you can say all of this, but anyway, what was it sold for and how many times was the return for the investors, please?
I don't think I can mention the actual sales, the actual number, because that's probably still confidential. But not on our part, by the way, but on the company that acquired us. But it was 2.5 to 3x return on the investment.
Very
but
good.
that was in the space of 2 to 3 years. It was a quick turnaround.
And your expectations for a sale of OncoAssure then? What do you think that might with that knowledge of the 2.5 to 3 for OncoMark?
Yes.
What's your predictions?
Well, I think we can easily support a 5x return from the current, say, investment round in a couple of years, with the projections that we have built in, and with the fact that we will then have a 2-test portfolio, whereas we only had 1 with the breast cancer test.
Of course. Fergal.
Excellent. Just regarding your partner in Illinois, so is GoPath's license exclusive in the US? And can you dig a bit deeper into that, please?
Yes. So GoPath is licensed. They have an exclusive license for testing, providing the test throughout the US. Their license for the marketing and selling is non-exclusive. So that means if we feel that there's parts of the US, because it's an enormous market, of course, that they're not covering adequately, we can make other arrangements with either third parties or indeed do the marketing and sales ourselves. So we've given ourselves some flexibility on the marketing and sales.
Excellent. So that kind of, so they're very key, I suppose, in the sense that they cover the burden costs of sales and marketing, which is a huge financial burden for the US. That's great. Perfect. Thanks.
I should add that one of the attractions of GoPath is they're already serving the market with their own tests. So they have a prostate hereditary cancer test, which will be complementary to our test, not competitive. It's a different approach. So they're already selling to thousands of urologists. So it means, they're adding us to their one of their products. So they're not, so there isn't a huge setup cost for them. So this is a big advantage for us. And they have all the relationships with the existing market.
Do you see an avenue into the European market with your diagnostics test as well, or is it going to be solely concentrated on the US?
Okay, so midterm we have plans for the European market, but there's a lot of challenges in the European market. First of all, that the market isn't really there. There isn't much take up for why I'm not quite sure, but in prostate cancer anyway, there hasn't been much take up. None of the other tests are actually active in the US market. So for us to go in the EU market, for us to go into the EU, we need very deep pockets to try and create the market. But we do see as in the next few years that the market will grow in Europe, and then we'll be ready to enter it.
Great, thanks.
Brilliant. They mentioned there is it Decipher prostate? So how will it compete with this kind of established tests and other tests like this in the market?
Yes, fair enough. It's a competitive market. The main thing is we'll be competing on the most important thing to the customer, and that's the performance of the test. And I showed there that we have very good data to show our test outperforms the existing tests. In addition to that, in terms of, say, diagnostic performance, we also have features to our test that are an improvement on the existing tests, whereas we identify new metrics, clinical metrics that are very important in terms of identifying the progression of cancer that the existing tests have not built into their algorithms.
Okay,
brilliant.
great.
And
Thank you.
just another follow-up question on, you mentioned on one of the slides there that this test has been carried out on over 1,000 patients. Where was that, or could you give a bit more detail maybe on that?
That testing was all done in our lab at Nova UCD. Like we developed the test. You have to test a lot of samples to develop. So that would have been involved in our discovery and development. The source of the samples that we used was an Irish cohort of samples we sourced from the university, and then 2 cohorts of clinical samples from Skane University Hospital in Sweden.
Great, brilliant. Thank you. What are the main sticking points to being on the different markets? Is there a risk of relying only on one lab, which could close the door at any stage or make demands? Is there a vulnerability in the GoPath Clear Lab?
Well, there is some. We're relying on the partner to be, to be consistent and to execute. But the agreement we have doesn't allow the partner simply to walk away. That's important. So they have responsibilities, and we have monitoring, and we've KPIs built into the agreement. And they're a very successful company. They're growing themselves. They've got all the relationships. There's no reason why they shouldn't do well. No, having said that, that can happen. So in the agreement, we have clear exit mechanisms that if they're not performing, we can move the test to another CLIA lab, and they have to comply with that.
And by extension, if the partnership goes very, very well with GoPath, is it likely to be a potential suitor of buying the IP from you?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's and we've already had that discussion with them. Once they feel that they can penetrate the market with the test, that they would be interested in acquiring it, and they requested in the agreement that they would have a right of first negotiation if we wanted to sell the test.
Very good. Final question. Sorry to commandeer this over you, Fergal, but this is the last question. Are you allowed to use other partners, or is there a restriction on using other labs within the US?
Yeah. Well, one thing about the CLIA lab system is only allows one lab. This is important, right? If you want to go to numerous labs, you have to go down the FDA route, which of course takes 2 or 3 years anyway. But so we can only use one lab. But if that lab doesn't work out, we can transfer to another lab. But basically, the test is provided as a service. So all the samples can get sent to the one lab in Chicago. And it's quite a feasible model, and there's thousands of tests using it at the moment.
And this is a very used mechanism in the US for this type of diagnostics anyway.
Absolutely, yes.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. That was very useful. I mean, the prostate cancer market is a growing issue, of course, and the side effects of a prostatectomy are severe, with erectile dysfunction and also kind of urinary tract issues, or urinary so it really is a something that you need to diagnose the low risk and the high risk, and find a mechanism whether the intermediate one is going left or right in those two scenarios as well. So very good. Anyway, okay, guys, listen, we said that we'd be all wrapped up by 2 o'clock. So a couple of closing statements, or closing elements from my side. So both companies, NestiFi and Onco, are live on the platform at the moment, both accepting investments. If anybody wants to have a one-to-one with either Onco or NestiFi, or both, of course, we'd be very happy to facilitate that with either Fergal, Gary, or Melissa, or indeed myself, if required. Yeah, we're very happy to answer any questions that may come up. I mentioned that the questions that we haven't had time to answer in full will be sent out to the guys. They'll write their answers, and we'll publish those on the platform as well. So you'll be able to see those in the coming days. So, guys, thank you very much indeed for your time. All our investors, thank you very much for your time as well. And we'll see you on the next webinar sometime, hopefully. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.